Everybody, welcome back to the Beyond the Peloton podcast. I'm Spencer Martin, author of the Beyond the Peloton newsletter. I'm here with Andrew Vontz from the Choose the Hard Way newsletter and podcast. We just wrapped up actually recording a special mini-sode there, and we're going to do a Tour de France rest day number 1 mini-sode over here. I've been up in Aspen, Colorado, doing the post-race show on Peacock, The Move. I guess it's also a podcast, but I've been a little time consumed. We're trying to get stuff out to our loyal listeners, though. Andrew, anything to plug before we get rolling here?
Yeah, if you read the Beyond the Peloton newsletter, watch for the Always the Hard Way Substack. That's my Substack. Spencer has it as a recommended Substack. Please follow me on Substack and consider becoming a paid subscriber to support Choose the Hard Way podcast, this podcast, all the fun stuff. And if you're ready to be a world-class podcast guest or host, that's something that I help people do through my consultancy, One Real Voice. You can DM me at hardwaypod or send an email to hello@onerealvoice.com if you're ready to be great. Spencer,
you teach people how to not make really loud noises when they're mic'd up on television and in podcasts, because we might have a few clients to send you.
Yeah, hey, I can make anybody a little bit better, and I can make some people a lot better.
There will be no shortage of clients from WeDo.inc. But yeah, Andrew, what are your thoughts on the tour so far? It's been kind of a weird tour because we started in the north, Lille, and which was weird because my kids were there, and then I was jealous of my kids for being at the tour while I wasn't. But we've been working our way through the north of the country. And then if you look at a map, yesterday's stage was in the Massey Central. First, real climbing stage, still not a climb longer than K, though, in length. And then in the GC, and it was in the middle of the country. They did this big transfer. And then now for tomorrow, they're transferring. They probably already did it before the rest day, to the south in Toulouse. So they basically they've skipped through the entire country of France in 2 days. But Ben Healy's technically leading the race. The Irishman, Tadej Pogačar, is the leader in the clubhouse, as you'd say, and he has a minute on Remco Evenepoel and then over a minute on Jonas Vingegaard, his biggest rival, and we haven't really had a climb yet. And the Stage 5 flat time trial was supposed to not favor Tadej Pogačar. So trouble if you're not Tadej Pogačar, I would say.
I've been thinking a lot about something I read attributed to Christian Prudhomme, that he has proposed having a tour without any high mountains.
Oh, he always says this every year. I dare you to do it, Christian.
Yeah, well, the thing that I've thought about in relation to this, and I have been dying to get on here and chop it up with you, Spencer. I just remember in the early 2000s how it was sacrosanct that you were going to start the Tour de France with the prologue. And you think about those prologue time trials at Futuroscope, the futuristic, right? It's just etched in your brain. The tour starting day one, you have to have the prologue. You could never remove it. You got to have a team time trial. If you've listened to this show for a while, you know that I think that you should just chuck time trials generally, and you definitely should get rid of time trial bikes. And that is something that, for me, the first week of the tour really underscored is let's just get rid of time trials. I mean, why do we have time trials? So Remco can win a stage?
Yeah. I mean, where would Remco win? How would he feel good about himself, Andrew?
Yeah.
Without these time trials. I think it's I think it's unnecessarily provocative, but it's kind of an interesting question. Well, here, I'm going to answer your question with an answer. So a friend of ours said, I hate sprint stages. Why do they have sprint stages? But sprint stages are like the dinosaurs in Jurassic Park. They will find a way to exist, because even if you didn't have sprint stages, there would be days where people are just tired and they're going to race slow, and then a person with a fast finishing kick will win from a bunch. Time trials will probably not appear out of the natural habitat. But to answer your question, it's probably just they exist because they have existed, right? It's just people like my friend Johan Brunel would say, well, it's tradition. You must have a time trial. But actually, if you start to examine it, why? Why not have a push-up contest on stage 5, right? It is kind of out of the rhythm of the race.
Yeah, you're now making me think about the Minnesota we just recorded for Choose the Hard Way, where we talked about if we just have 1 hour, how are we going to work out? I didn't get to comment on it there. I think the big revelation Spencer made a secret training disclosure that he's doing 100 push-ups and pull-ups before his kids wake up. If you're listening, that's how you end up overburdened with too much muscle. So you're going to want to avoid that advice. But if we were to go with it's tradition, we'd still be having cafe raids. People would be running in and grabbing everything to drink. We would be on 2 speeds. There are a lot of, everybody be on tubulars. I don't know about tradition. I think that cycling is a progressive sport. And one of the things we can do to progress it is to regress it. We're going back to wider handlebars. It's been mandated. Let's take the next step and get rid of time trials.
Well, okay. So I'm going to make you defend this in a second, but just to set the stage. This is the GC without time trials so far. Ben Healy is leading by 3 minutes, 49 seconds. It's actually pretty interesting. Jonas Vingegaard is behind Tadej Pogačar by 12 seconds. Matteo Jorgensen is behind Tadej Pogačar by about half a minute. Remco Evenepoel is down bad. He's just out of the GC entirely. Doesn't stand a chance. Yeah, because I'm on set all day with a bunch of time trial dudes, right? Especially Bradley Wiggins. His life is time trials. They are saying the opposite. We need more time trials. I do think in this specific case, the race would be more interesting with more time trials because Remco would get a lead and then have to peg him back. The problem is, I think the guys I'm hanging out with all day are part of the issue why we don't see a lot of time trials. Because if you gave Lance Armstrong a bunch of time trials, he just would ride away in the time trials and then also was the best in the mountains. Same thing with Bradley Wiggins. He did have some wobbles in the mountains, but his time trials were just incredible. And then no one could be close to him and then no one could challenge him in the mountains. And they've actually started to pare back time trials. But Andrew, what does a time trial add to a race? Do you think it adds anything to the racing?
When I was younger, I found the equipment to be really interesting.
I agree. Yeah, when I was younger, I do not anymore. I don't know why that is.
Now I just want to bicycle to work when I
a big old 8-speed chain sounds awesome. Not going to drop.
Yeah. Yeah. My big aspiration when I get on a bike is that it works and that nothing breaks and I safely am able to ride the bike. I don't find the time trial equipment to be that interesting anymore, especially now that in general, I don't think it's practical to be riding around on a time trial bike with the Spaceballs helmet in particular. It's just not safe when you go out and do that in the general public. And you mentioned sprinters. Sprinters find a way. I think something really interesting that's happened in the sport of professional cycling since I started following it in 1988 is sprint stages that were just a procession leading to a long drag race with somebody like Cipollini, Pataki. Marcel Kittel, I think, is another example of someone who really excelled when you just have a long drag race, big lead out trains. What we've seen happen is courses have become hillier. I mean, as you said, we're not in the high mountains. However, if you look at the parcours for these stages that have happened from the start of the race through July 15th when we're recording this, I mean, it's typical that you're still having 7,000 to 12,000 feet of climbing on a quote unquote flat stage. It's just rolling hills. So they're doing a lot of climbing. And what's happened is that riders who are sprinters they've become a totally different kind of rider. It used to be that a rider who was a sprinter looked more like someone you would see winning a criterium in the Midwest, just total beefcake. And today, you have to be a really well-rounded rider who can hang over 7,000 to 10,000 feet, maybe more, of climbing on a rolling course, get to the end, and then be able to sprint. And also, probably you need to be able to sprint uphill after a climb of 1 to 2K as well. And there are more specialized sprinters within each of those specific types of finishes. Sprinters in general, though, have had to become more well-rounded. And I think it's made the sport more interesting. It's made the stages more dynamic. And even if we look at Visma this week, Jonas, the king of the echelon now. Quite interesting.
He's pulling through in echelons all the time.
Yeah. I mean, I'm like, wow, this is a lot more exciting than the race was 3 or 4 years ago. And why? Because people are having to try some new things and throw some things at the wall to see if they can get something to stick to take down the POG code.
Yeah, on the sprinters, like, so Jonathan Milan is really big. I guess he's like 6'6", but the thing about Milan is he can also climb really well, so he can afford to be that big. He puts out 2,000 watts in the sprint, pretty good, not too bad.
Not bad.
But he can like only afford to do that because his threshold power is so high. So he can climb great. But like think of Tim Merlier. He's the biggest sprinteriest guy at this race. And if you saw him, you'd think if you rode with him, you'd say you must be the best climber in the world. Like he is not, he is a very who is a very good bike rider on different types of terrain. I think this has happened because they took a rider away. So the teams went from 9 to 8. And that does hurt your team way more than you think. It hurts your ability to do the lead out. And also the mountain stages got fast, like real fast. And so to even make the time cut, you have to be a great climber. To even just take the start line at the Tour de France as a sprinter. andJonas, Visma, just ripping it up in these crosswinds. Question Bradley Wiggins asked, who are they trying to catch out here? Is it Tadej Pogačar, the world's best classics rider? I guess. Seems like a lot of work, though, to put into that.
I have no idea. I think they're just doing anything possible to try to create separation and to try to put Pog under psychological pressure, which I do not believe Pog is feeling that. Even with Alameda out of the race, I think he's cool as ice and top gunning it more so than Ghana, who exited the race very early. Yeah. A lot has been made of this Visma UAE beef. The thing I wrote down in my notes is that this is being characterized as almost similar to the knife fight sequence in the Beat It video. It's very, very hard for me to believe that this is a real thing. I mean, they're sporting rivals. Is it really that intense? Pog getting cut off for a bottle. He put his hand on somebody. Haven't we all done that in an office park crit?
Well, this is definitely the sign that we have not had enough mountain stages, because actually I would be curious to see a tour without mountain stages would look like we just had, which is funny because Pogačar would just win anyway. But it's like high tension and it's boring, right? Because like the media's got to look for something like this is what they can find. I will say on the crosswinds, if you're in a crosswind, if you're in an echelon, the safest place to be is pulling through. So that's probably why Jonas is doing that. It's a really good idea, actually. But yeah, I think we just don't have enough to talk about. And actually, an interesting wrinkle to that is last year, like UAE and Visma, if you went to a race like the Tour, they would have 10 vans just go out on course full of soigneurs, and they would hand bottles off wherever they wanted. The UCI made that illegal because some teams can't afford to have that much staff, that many vans. And now you have to just only hand stuff off in the feed zones. And it has added a lot of tension. Like I saw, I think it was Tim Wellens dropped a bottle. This was 2 days ago, and Mark Solaire's teammates screaming at him, which is not that helpful, right? I don't think he meant to drop the bottle, but it's like high stakes if you miss one of these feed zones because you might not get another one for 40K. So I guess that's why it's so tense. My question to you, Andrew, why is Pogačar getting his own bottle in a feed zone? Isn't that what the teammates are for?
You would think. At the same time, I think depending on where you are and the nature of the feed zone itself, I think that we've seen some of these feed zones positioned in areas that are not highly conducive to actually grabbing a bottle. I believe one of them was on a downhill.
Yeah, they're going like 60K an hour through these feed zones at times.
Yeah. So I think that, yes, ideally they would be positioned differently. Somebody else would be grabbing the bottle. And then at the end of the day, as is the case in every area of life, sometimes you got to do what you got to do to get by. And I think particularly with where the feed zones are positioned and really the big X factor in professional cycling, which is just this preponderance of road furniture everywhere. It just continues to blow my mind. I also wonder, is it making professional cycling exponentially more dangerous just to be out there with all this stuff on the road that ironically is meant to slow down cars and probably make the road a bit safer for people out there moving under their own power? I don't know, but I do know that they're just riding into, it looks like they're riding into the Maginot Line sometimes. I just like can't believe the stuff that they're riding into and the way the road's separating and it's going from 5 lanes to 1.5 lanes, making a right turn at 50 miles an hour. It's nonsense.
On the bottle, I think Pogacar's argument was like, Matteo should have moved out of the way for me because I'm the yellow jersey. Like, pretty much wholeheartedly disagree with that. It was like, Matteo doesn't have to do anything for you. Why? I don't know. Like the whole, and I do think it's like falling apart, which I like, this like respect for the jersey. You don't have to respect the jersey. Matteo shouldn't respect the jersey. He's trying to beat you. He's your competitor. Did you see this weird handshake though at the end of the stage yesterday? So like Pogacar, Vingegaard, they're getting old, by the way. Did you see they just rolled over the line? It's like I remember 2 years ago they were sprinting nonsense sprints for fifth place on stages with nothing on the line. Like what's happening? These guys are getting too smart. But they roll over the line, and then Jonas sticks his hand out to shake Pogacar's hand, and Pogacar's like a little confused, like what is happening here? Like in the middle of a GC battle, bud. What are you doing? But I don't know what to make of that. But I do. Wiesma was quite active yesterday. I've mulled this over in my mind quite a bit. I was pretty critical on the post race show yesterday. I still think they're like, even I know, Andrew, I do not understand. You're in a GC battle and you're sending two key domestiques into the breakaway. I cannot get my head around that. And it's a little strange. I think if UAE did it, they would get roasted for it. But because it's Wiesma, it's just like, it's part of the plan. But it's like, hey, you might want to use Simon Yates like in 3 days. Is he going to be ready to go? His kgs expended were probably exponentially higher than if he would have been in the peloton.
Wiesma's accepted that they're not winning this race.
That's where I wanted you to end up. Yeah, I think that this is an admission that they're going for stage wins because they need to get something out of this race. Think about Wout sprinting. What was that? Just the day before, 2 days before. If like they're going for stage wins already in the first week, I think because they know it's probably done.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we've already seen the shift, and I'm wondering what Matteo's thinking.
Matteo should be thinking about that podium, because
right?
he can absolutely finish on the podium, and he should. I think I also think like Wiesma's presented as this UAE, by the way, is like a clown car. Like Pogacar is unbeatable. The guy is incredible. He's Iceman. The team, no matter how strong a team they come into a race with, they just like, what are they doing in the evening? Are they going to the club? Everyone always gets sick. Almeida, obviously, they can't help him crashing, but he leaves. It's like no matter who they come into the tour with, they're always like down bad after the first weekends with a weak team. But it's just with Wiesma, like I don't fully understand like will it really help them? Because the way you would leverage Matteo being high up in the GC to pinch, we saw them like yesterday, Matteo's attacking. The problem is Matteo's so big and so not explosive that Pogacar just is on his wheel when he attacks and is like, this is amazing. It's like having a great teammate. It didn't work, but the way you would pressure UAE with Matteo is you would slip him into an early breakaway. The problem is that's super risky for Matteo because if he gets caught, he's getting spat out the back and the podium's gone. So he's probably not going to do it. And Pogacar knows that. So I do think it's likely Wiesma ends up with second and third. And one thing I think is kind of undercovered is I had this thought yesterday. It's like, oh, Wiesma's attacking. There's so much going on. They're winning the stage. Sepp Kuss is off the front of the peloton for unknown reasons. Matteo's attacking. Pogacar's teammates are all gone. But it's like, you know what? All UAE is thinking is fight, fight, fight to get back to Pogacar. And they did. They got guys back to him. They have a really simple goal. And it's like Wiesma's goals, it just feels like they have too many things going on. And it's like, yeah, they might be the stronger team, but they have like 10 different goals at this race. And it just feels overly complicated versus UAE, which is, well, I'm Jonthan Navarez. I should ride as hard as I can until I get back to Tadej Pogacar. And then I'm with him and I'll ride on the front until I get dropped.
Do you believe that Carapaz is out of the race? He didn't start the Tour de France this year, as we know.
Illness.
Movistar watching what's going on at EF right now. Maybe they're thinking we should have signed Ben Healy for 2026 instead of this, what we know to be forthcoming Carapaz deal. A thought that I had with Healy's fireworks, what a week this guy has had, is Nielsen Palace not doing better at EF? And he's had some big rides. Is he not doing better because he does not meet the Heron style standard at EF?
It has to be, right? It's too clean cut. It's just having this debate with somebody the other day about Nielsen Palace and like, yeah, no, I think they're producing about what their talent is. And I completely disagree. Like 5 years ago, Matteo Jorgensen and Nielsen, like it was flipped. Nielsen Palace was the big star. Matteo was, you'd probably never even heard of him, right? Like Nielsen was a huge prospect. Almost won a stage at Tour California as a teenager, I believe. US U23 national champion in front of a bunch of good riders, went to Visma, and then I don't fully, I just feel like they sent him into the Tour without defined goals. And then, but I guess that's what Ben Healy's doing. And then Ben Healy's won a stage and is leading the race. And the guy like can't be stopped. I mean, did you see they do a power meter scroll at the end of winning rides just on Instagram? And he's a small guy, really small guy. And it was like 1 hour power was something like 350 watts. It's like, that's probably what he's holding like in the last hour to win that race. Like, did you see him in the last 30K yesterday where he knew he wanted the yellow jersey. He knew no one was going to work with him. So he just got on the front and pulled for 30K and then still almost won the stage. Like, super impressive from Ben Healy.
Yeah, I believe that I believe I did call a Ben Healy stage win in our Tour de France preview episode. I thought that he was going to do this. I think it's a long time coming. And what you just described this is the EF playbook. This is how they win stages. They put Ben Healy, or even when Carapaz won a stage, whether it's at the Tour or at other races, it's the same technique every time, which is just to the front, right off the front, repeat ad infinitum. And from time to time, it sticks. And it's something.
And they put guys in there with them. So they had like 4 teammates with Healy yesterday because they have no other goals here. It's high risk, I guess. You could really fall on your face. So they don't have a sprinter or a GC rider, but it helps a lot in breakaways.
Yeah, it's exciting to watch. I like his style. And it reminded me of someone else who is not at this race, who just won a mountain bike World Cup and at his best on the road, which we haven't seen recently, has this exact same attacking style. And that's Tom Pidcock, not slated to race on the road again until the start of the Vuelta. I'm perplexed at this point. I don't understand what's going on.
I don't understand the Pidcock situation either. What's funny is Ben Healy's probably a better version of Tom Pidcock, right? Yellow jersey, stage win, all in the first 10 days of the Tour. Probably makes Tom Pidcock, I think, is the second or third highest paid bike rider in the world. And you're like, that contract seems a little out of hand for winning some World Cup races during the Tour de France, when you probably would, your team sponsor would probably want you in the Tour de France, winning those stages. I don't know. I mean, Pidcock, the thing about Pidcock is I find myself so unimpressed with him. And then a week later, I'm like, I heard he didn't ride a mountain bike all year. Then he just showed up and won a mountain bike World Cup. That's not very easy to do. He's probably the only rider in the world who can do that. We saw Matthew Van Der Poel crash twice in the opening lap of a mountain bike World Cup recently. And that guy looks like he's the best bike handler in the world. Ben Healy must be multitudes better than him. So I'm like simultaneously impressed and depressed by Tom Pidcock.
Van Der Poel. This ride the other day allegedly began with some joking around. Just a couple of teammates making some jokes. Jonas Rickard said that he puked 4 times during that ride. Cycling moving in the direction of T100 and Ironman triathlon racing, where it's mandatory that you vomit while racing.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I guarantee you he vomited that much because it was hot and he was probably shoving down 200 carbs an hour out there because they were just getting those bottles from the team car. Also, did you know that team car working the angles there pretty well? They hit the crosswinds. Ooh, the team car is up beside us, handing us bottles. Like, they know what they're doing at that team. That breakaway was wild, by the way. I believe, what was that stage? It was stage 9. And it was supposed to be, I could hear Jonathan Kaplan moaning from DC, from where I am here. Like, this man hates sprint stages. This was going to be the mother of boring sprint stages. No one wanted to get in the break because they knew it was going to get caught. Van Der Poel's teammate goes because he wants to be most combative. He's always wanted to be on the podium of a Tour de France stage. And then Van Der Poel comes after him. Little Trek thought it was a joke. I guess it was a joke, but they thought they were going to sit up after the intermediate sprint. So they let him get this huge gap. No, they don't sit up. They just keep going. 3.5, it was 108 miles. They do it in 3 hours, 28 minutes. That's 31 miles an hour. That's pretty good. I got a lot of heat because I insinuated on the Peacock broadcast that these Tour de France stages are in fact harder than U.S. criteriums. And the crit riders were not happy to hear that. I got a lot of bodily threats coming inbound But yeah, that would be faster than like the fastest crit in the United States, an hour-long crit, and they're doing it for an entire Tour de France stage where they have to then come back and race the next day. I mean, can you imagine just swapping turns for 108 miles? We're just rolling at 31 miles an hour average. That's wild.
Yeah, go outside and see how long you can ride for 31 miles an hour wherever you live in the world, and then
Yeah.
get back to us. The thing that I thought, what's Matthew Van Der Poel training for? That's what I'm thinking about.
He
Obviously,
wants to win the world mountain bike championships, I think. That's
right.
what he
So
said. Yeah.
there was some objective here. This was a training day for Matthew Van Der Poel. To me, this is the buried lead. This is a question no one's asking. Not a chance in hell he just went out and randomly did this. I don't believe that narrative. I think that there was some specific training objective, and he needed to get something out of this that he wasn't getting out of being in the peloton, just doing a typical brutal day at the Tour de France.
Well, he did almost win the stage because it was so ridiculous that I think it perplexed the teams behind, which is always it's always a good thing. But, he's already won a stage. Did he really need to win? Yeah, it was confusing. I have heard that riders are getting pressured because it's more the trend now to bring in people who haven't raced before to be like strategic advisors for the team or to be coaches. And I heard riders are getting pressure from coaches who are like, hey, this first week's too easy. You're detraining. You need to get that TSS score up. It's honestly, it's not impossible that your theory has some truth to it.
Well, my theory is correct. I don't know if it's he needed more TSS for the Tour for something else though, or maybe you're right. Maybe there's some objective.
No, I think you're right that he wants to win world championships, and they're like, hey, you're detraining at this tour.
Yeah.
You got to get a hard day in. Yeah.
Yeah, completely. Like, let's get in a 3-hour threshold workout. We're going to use the Norwegian method today. And then when he got home, he probably went on a run.
Then he was swimming in the. Before we go, we did say this was a mini-sode. I need your take on.
You want to talk about Primoz, right?
Primoz, we should touch. Primoz didn't want to come to this race, by the way. They made him come to this race, and he is throwing a very public fit about it, and he'll probably finish on the podium. But that's my prediction. What do you think about Primoz?
I just have been, the one thing that I really took away from Unchained, I hadn't watched it the last time we talked. I haven't finished it yet because I just haven't found it to be that interesting. I did get to the Primoz episode, and I don't think it gets talked about enough that Primoz and people who grew up in cycling, like Pog and others, versus Remco, who grew up playing football/soccer. I don't like, you're just never going to close that gap of comfort on the bike. Like, I'm sorry, like you have a ski jumper versus a guy that was on the national soccer team until he was 17. And Remco even said in Unchained how uncomfortable he feels going downhill. In fact, I thought that was one of the more interesting and honest things that was said during that show. Is Remco talks about like, hey, when you're going 65 miles an hour down a mountain, it's terrifying. Like your bike's shaking, like it's out of control. And I think Primoz said, going down's the easy part. That's fun.
Yeah, he's like, oh, it's easier than going up, huh?
Yeah.
And Primoz, what happened? Stage 1 rolls into this Tour de France. He's in the mixer, crosswinds coming up, and he gets caught out in the crosswinds. Loses 39 seconds on day 1. You saw him getting pushed off the road even. Like that is something that you learn as a little kid. Like just the being that comfortable in a group like that. And to put that into perspective, like think how much work and money goes into Remco's time trialing. And he gains 16 seconds on Pogačar in the time trial, loses 39 seconds in the crosswinds, where Pogačar probably put out fewer like watts than the guy who lost time. Like that's how important the little margins are at a race like this, because they probably spend hundreds of thousands of dollars a year on aerodynamicists, like with the special bars. And then it's like, well, you're just throwing that all away because you're not positioned correctly on the first stage of the tour.
Yeah, correct. Another thing that's boggling my mind that I want to mention, when I was out riding my bicycle today, I had a bug fly into my glasses and splat. And this is something that happens, fairly regularly. I happen to have a photo up right now of one of the icons of World Tour cycling, Victor Campenaerts, who, as we know, famously does not ride with sunglasses.
Yeah, I just had the same thing happen to me, and I was wondering about Victor.
Yeah. And you have to think within the course of the Tour de France, for the amount of time the guy's spending on a bike, he must have bugs fly into his eyes. And he's on the front a lot too, Spencer. This guy is not just sitting in the pack.
Yeah.
Like, how is he doing this without having retinal damage?
Why is he doing this?
Why he's said the reason he does it is to be different. There's no reason. He just said, I wanted to be different, and this is the thing I picked. I'm gonna have permanently damaged eyes.
Yeah, like rocks kicking up and stuff. What are you doing, man?
I don't know.
He was like integral to the. I still don't understand it, but he gets in the breakaway with Simon Yates, starts driving the breakaway. So they're too far ahead. They can't drop back to help Jonas, and then it's like Simon's like, "Oops, now I got to win the stage." So Victor, he was important. Why they were doing it, not clear to me. And if you were watching that stage wondering why is the peloton letting this breakaway go, because they wanted it to go, because Ben Healy is now in the yellow jersey on the rest day, which means Tadej Pogačar is probably at the pool, doesn't have to do the race leaders press conference on the rest day, and everything is on Ben Healy. And they are not worried about catching Ben Healy in the Pyrenees.
Make party.
Yeah, he's making party. Hopefully. I've actually heard quite a few stories about people making party at the Tour. And I think if I'm paying X person X amount of money, and then I heard about them making party at the Tour and then being a chronic underperformer later in the Tour, I'd be quite upset about it.
Yeah, I think the main thing we're missing at this point, and maybe we'll wrap it up here and we'll see what happens between now and the next time we meet, Spencer, to have a conversation like this. In this Tour, we've had a lot of things happen. What we have not had happen, no rap videos from any of the major players. We have no Astana rap video. We have no Pog rap video. We have no Wout van Aert rap video. When are the rappers going to step up and start spitting some bars here in 2025?
I wonder if is that gone though? Will it be like opera? I wonder if we've moved past rap as something to parody, and if we'll just move into like opera music. Like, will we get an EF opera video this year, perhaps?
That's a wine tasting. I don't know. I'm sure that EF has a sommelier, right?
Yeah, house sommelier. I have a question for you. So Ben Healy, you might have noticed, English accent, but he's Irish, rides for Ireland because he's from England, grew up in England, and then could not make the like British junior team. And if you can't make that, you're done, because like that's where all the support in that country comes from for like youth cycling. So he switches. His dad's Irish, so he switches his nationality to Ireland. He's racing for like the Irish junior team, and then becomes a very successful professional. How does that happen? Like I heard another story where Peter Sagan tested for maybe Quick Step, and they just like weren't impressed with the test results. It's like, what are these coaches looking at? Like, how could the power required to do what he's done so far at this Tour go unnoticed? I don't understand it.
How often do people produce the same results in a lab that they would produce on the road as well?
That's a very good question. Very good question. I think you're onto something there.
I believe I am.
Also, it's possible someone like Ben Healy has seemingly pedestrian power numbers on like an easier, like let's say 1 to 2 hour racing, which maybe you would do as an amateur or younger. But 3 hours into the hardest stage of the race, because it's been all out, he can still do that. And then he can drop everybody in the breakaway, including Matthew van der Poel, who's salting up a storm, and ride away to win. And that, it's like, maybe that doesn't show up in that type of testing, I guess. But we got to start looking deeper, guys, because if we're letting Ben Healy and Peter Sagan fall through the cracks, we got to rethink the test. Your tests are wrong.
And with a rider like Ben Healy, similar to Remco, Remco probably has good test results, but just how aerodynamic they are, which you're not getting in a lab, unless I guess you stick a rider in a wind tunnel, which I don't think they're doing to your average person doing testing.
That's a very good point. There's so many lab tests you do, and you're just sitting there pumping out power, and no one asks the question, how aero is this person? What's the CDA when they're doing this power? I mean, Wiggins told me that Remco during his time trial, he's doing between 380 and 400 watts, which to beat the guys he's beating is like, that's not very much power at all. But that shows you just how much he relies on being aero and how effective that can be.
And why we need to ban time trials altogether.
Get rid of them. That is a very provocative question that I guess I will say, in defense of time trialing, I do wonder without them, like we saw you see it at the Tour where the time trial is not until stage 20, if things cluster together too much and you get boring racing versus time trialing, which spreads things out and then forces people to attack. I don't even really believe that as I'm saying it. I'm just trying to get something on the record so we don't get totally attacked by the time trialist.
Yeah, and then there's the worst thing of all, the team time trial.
That is amazing. Yeah, it's like, how'd you win the Tour, Egan Bernal? Because my team had a bunch of time trialists and we went faster than everybody. It's like, well, how's that related to you? No, it's not really that related to me. Should that be in an individual event? No, not at all. It'd be like in Wimbledon in the third round if you had to play with like 4 other people on the court to advance.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Andrew. Well, now the time trials and the crit heads are coming after us. So that is, it might not be safe for us to leave our homes, but we will touch base maybe before the next rest day, maybe on the next rest day. But stay ready, everybody, and we'll talk soon.